The first time Dante Moretti truly saw Elena Vasquez, she was trying to disappear. It was a Wednesday morning in late September, and the autumn sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Boston penthouse, casting geometric shadows across the marble floors. Dante sat at his desk reviewing shipping manifests that had nothing to do with the luxury import business listed on his tax returns, his mind already calculating the week's necessary moves in a game most people didn't know existed. Elena entered his study at exactly 7:45, as she had every morning for the past 2 months, carrying his espresso on a silver tray. She moved like a ghost, footsteps silent, eyes downcast, her entire being focused on the singular goal of being unremarkable. "Good morning, Mr. Moretti," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Dante glanced up from his papers, offering the brief nod he gave all household staff. Professional distance, that was the rule. Elena set the cup down with both hands, and that's when it happened. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Her sleeve rode up just an inch, maybe 2, revealing a bracelet of bruises around her wrist. Dark, purple, almost black, fresh. The kind of marks that came from someone grabbing hard, twisting, holding on while someone struggled. Their eyes met for half a second. Hers widened with panic, his narrowed with recognition. She yanked her sleeve down so fast she nearly knocked over the espresso cup. "Careful," Dante said, his voice controlled, revealing nothing of the cold fury suddenly coiling in his chest. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll get you another. It's fine." He watched her hands tremble as she steadied the cup. "Elena." She froze at the sound of her name. In 2 months he'd never used it. "Yes, Mr. Moretti? How did you get those bruises?" The color drained from her face. "I'm clumsy. I bumped into a cabinet door yesterday while cleaning." Dante leaned back in his chair, studying her with the same attention he gave to business negotiations, where millions hung in the balance. Elena was 24, petite, with dark hair, always pulled back in a severe bun and brown eyes that never quite met anyone's gaze directly. She was thorough, punctual, and seemed to exist in a perpetual state of careful invisibility. He'd noticed her before, of course. Noticed how she flinched when doors closed too loudly, how she always positioned herself near exits, how she never ate in the staff dining room, preferring to take her meals alone. All the telltale signs of someone running from something. "Both wrists?" he asked quietly. Her hand flew unconsciously to her other arm, and he saw the confirmation in her body language before she even spoke. "I'm very clumsy, Mr. Moretti. It won't affect my work, I promise." She was already backing toward the door, that familiar flight response he recognized from years of reading people's survival instincts. "Elena." His voice was gentle, but it stopped her mid-retreat. "Sit down. I really should get back to sit." Not loud, never loud, but something in his tone made people listen. She perched on the edge of the leather chair across from his desk, looking like she wanted to bolt through the window. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes darting between him and the door like she was calculating escape routes. Dante set down his pen with deliberate calm. "Show me." "Mr. Moretti, please, I can't." "You can," he interrupted softly. "And you will. Because you work in my home, which means you're under my protection." "Do you understand what that means?" Elena's hands twisted in her lap. I don't want any trouble." "You're not in trouble." Dante kept his voice even, unthreatening. "But someone hurt you, recently, and I need to know who." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with trembling fingers, she slowly pulled back both sleeves. The bruises were worse than he'd thought. Finger-shaped marks, some fresh and angry, others fading to yellow-green. Someone had grabbed her, multiple times, hard enough to leave imprints, hard enough to hurt. He could see exactly how it had happened, someone grabbing her wrists when she tried to pull away, squeezing tighter when she struggled. Dante felt something dark and familiar settle into his bones. Rage, yes, but controlled, calculated, the kind that made him very, very dangerous. "Who did this?" His voice was soft as silk and twice as deadly. Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Nobody. I told you. Don't lie to me, Elena." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "I've spent my entire life reading people. You're terrified. These are defensive wounds. Someone grabbed you, and you tried to pull away. Multiple times, so I'm going to ask you once more, and I want the truth. Who hurt you? The tears spilled over. Please don't get involved. Please. You don't understand what he's capable of. He'll what? Dante's voice dropped to something colder than ice. Elena stood abruptly. I need to go. Mrs. Chen needs help with the… Sit down, Elena. Mr. Moretti, please, sit down. She sank back into the chair, and for the first time since she'd entered his study, she looked directly at him, really looked at him. And what she saw there, not anger at her, but fury on her behalf, made her shoulders slump in defeat. His name is Marcus, she whispered. Marcus Reeves. We dated for 18 months. I left him 4 months ago, but he won't. He won't accept that it's over. Dante pulled out his phone and opened a notes app. His movements calm and methodical. Where does he live? Mr. Moretti? You can't address Elena. I don't know his new address. He moved after I left. Where does he work? She hesitated, then whispered. He's a personal trainer at Elite Fitness in the South End. When did he do this to you? Dante gestured at her wrists. Monday night. He was waiting outside my apartment when I got home from work. He wanted to talk. When I tried to go inside, he grabbed me. Said I owed him a conversation after destroying his life. Did he hurt you anywhere else? Elena's hand moved unconsciously to her ribs, and Dante's jaw tightened. Show me. Mr. Moretti, I really don't think. Show me. With shaking hands, Elena lifted the hem of her simple black uniform shirt just enough to reveal a massive bruise blooming across her left side. Boot-shaped, someone had kicked her. Dante closed his eyes briefly, forcing himself to maintain control. When he opened them, his voice was perfectly calm. Did you report this to the police? She laughed, a broken sound that held no humor. I've reported him 6 times over the past 4 months. Do you know what happens? They take a statement, file it away, and tell me to get a restraining order. I have one. It expires in 2 weeks, and when I tried to renew it, the judge said I didn't have sufficient evidence of ongoing harassment. You have bruises. I told them I fell. Why? Elena's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Because the last time I pressed charges, Marcus showed up at my sister's dorm room. Sophia is 19 and in her sophomore year at BU. She's the reason I work this job, Mr. Moretti. I'm helping pay her tuition because our parents died 3 years ago in a car accident, and we have no one else. If Marcus goes to jail, he threatened he'll have his friends go after her. He made that very clear. Dante set his phone down carefully. Elena, look at me. She did, tears streaming down her face. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to believe me. Marcus Reeves will never touch you again. That's not a hope or a wish. That's a promise. You can't promise that. You don't know what he's capable of. Yes, I can. Dante's voice carried absolute certainty. Because you work in my house now. That means you're under my protection, and I keep what's mine safe. I'm not yours, she said quietly. I'm just an employee. You're someone who was hurt under my roof. In my world, that makes it my responsibility to fix. He stood and walked to his window, hands in his pockets. Marcus Reeves made a mistake. He touched someone connected to me. That was his first error. His second was thinking he could get away with it. Elena stood on shaky legs. Mr. Moretti, please don't do anything that could come back on you. I'm not worth… He turned sharply. Don't finish that sentence. Every person deserves to feel safe in their own life. You're not an exception to that rule. After Elena left his study, moving like someone in a daze, Dante stood at his window for a long moment. He thought about his sister, Isabella, who died 15 years ago at the hands of her abusive boyfriend. How he'd seen the signs but been too young, too powerless to intervene effectively. How he'd found her too late. He'd sworn then that he'd never let it happen again, that if he ever had the power to protect someone from that kind of violence, he would use it without hesitation. Now he had that power. And Marcus Reeves was about to learn what happened when you hurt someone under Dante Moretti's protection. He made 3 phone calls. The first was to his head of security, Vincent Romano, a former Marine who'd saved Dante's life twice and now oversaw all security operations for the Moretti family interests. Vincent, I need a full background check. Name is Marcus Reeves, personal trainer at Elite Fitness in the South End. I want everything. Where he lives, where he drinks, who his friends are, his financial records, his criminal history, parking tickets, everything. And I want surveillance on him starting immediately. How fast do you need this? Yesterday would be late. There was a pause. Vincent had worked for Dante for 8 years and knew what personal meant. "I'll have preliminary information in 3 hours." The second call was to his attorney, Richard Chen, who'd been the family's legal counsel for 2 decades and knew exactly how far the law could bend before breaking. "Richard, I need you to research restraining order protocols and domestic violence case law in Massachusetts. Specifically, what it takes to get an emergency protective order extended and what constitutes sufficient evidence of ongoing harassment. Are you in legal trouble, Dante?" "Not me. Someone I'm helping." "Does this person have representation?" "Not good enough representation, apparently. I want you to handle it personally. I'll need to meet with the client. I'll arrange it. And Richard? This stays completely confidential. No paper trail that connects back to me directly." The third call was to his younger sister, Lucia, who ran several legitimate businesses for the family, including a nonprofit organization that helped domestic violence survivors. "Luce, I need information about domestic violence resources in Boston. Shelters, legal advocates, support groups. The best ones, not the underfunded ones." "Dante, what's going on? Is someone you know?" "One of my household staff is being stalked by an ex. I'm handling it." There was a long pause. "By handling it, please tell me you mean legally and not—" "I mean thoroughly," he interrupted. "But yes, we're starting with legal channels. I need to know what resources are available so I can connect her with the right people." "Her name?" "Elena Vasquez, 24, supporting a younger sister in college. No family support system." Lucia's voice softened. "I'll send you a complete resource packet within the hour. And Dante? This is good. What you're doing, Papa would be proud." After the calls, Dante sat in silence. Somewhere in this city, Marcus Reeves was going about his day, probably feeling very pleased with himself for putting Elena in her place. Probably thinking he'd gotten away with it again. That was going to change. By noon, Vincent had delivered a preliminary report. Dante sat in his office, reading through Marcus Reeves's life with the thoroughness of someone studying an opponent before a chess match. Marcus David Reeves, age 26, personal trainer at Elite Fitness for 2 years. Before that, worked security at various nightclubs in the South End and Dorchester. No felony convictions, but multiple arrests for assault that were mysteriously dropped. 3 different ex-girlfriends had filed restraining orders against him. All 3 orders had expired without renewal. Interesting pattern there. Vincent had also included photographs. Marcus was tall, built like someone who spent hours in the gym, with the kind of aggressive swagger that masked deep insecurity. His social media was full of shirtless selfies, motivational quotes about alpha males, and thinly veiled complaints about women who couldn't handle a real man. Textbook case of an abusive narcissist. What caught Dante's attention, however, was Marcus's financial information. A personal trainer pulling in maybe $40,000 a year, yet he drove a brand new BMW, wore expensive clothes, and frequented clubs where a single bottle of vodka cost more than Elena probably made in a week. Someone was funding Marcus's lifestyle. The question was who and why. "Keep digging into his finances," Dante instructed Vincent during their afternoon meeting. "I want to know where the money's coming from. Bank accounts, credit cards, Venmo transactions, everything. Already on it." His gym buddy, Trevor Walsh, co-signed the lease on Marcus's new apartment. Walsh is connected to the Hennigan crew out of Southie. Dante's eyes narrowed. The Hennigans were small-time criminals who ran protection rackets, loan sharking, and had recently started dabbling in pharmaceutical distribution. Not direct competitors to the Moretti interests, but not allies either. What's the connection between Marcus and the Hennigans? Still investigating, but preliminary intel suggests Marcus worked security for some of their operations when he was younger. Could be he's doing enforcement work on the lay side. Would explain the extra income. And the assault charges that got dropped? One of them involved a bar fight where Marcus put a guy in the hospital. Victims suddenly refused to testify. Detective on the case was Frank Hennigan's cousin. So Marcus had protection. Not the kind that would save him from what was coming, but enough to make him feel untouchable. That was going to be his downfall. At 3 p.m, Dante asked Mrs. Chen, his head housekeeper, to send Elena to his office. She arrived looking even more pale than she had that morning, if that was possible. "You're not in trouble," Dante said before she could spiral. "Sit down. Please." Elena perched on the edge of the chair, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. I've arranged for you to meet with my personal attorney tomorrow morning. His name is Richard Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, and he's the best in Boston. He's going to help you get your restraining order extended and pursue any legal action necessary to keep Marcus away from you and your sister. Mr. Moretti, I can't afford. You're not paying for it. I can't accept that. It's too much. Elena. He waited until she looked at him. This isn't charity. This is me taking care of someone who works for me. There are no strings attached, no expectations of repayment. I'm simply ensuring that you're safe enough to continue doing your job without constantly looking over your shoulder. Why? The question burst out of her. I'm nobody. I clean your house and bring you coffee. Why would someone like you care what happens to someone like me? Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because 15 years ago, I watched someone I cared about suffer through something similar. I was too young and stupid to help her the way she needed. I've regretted that every day since. I'm not making the same mistake twice. Elena's eyes filled with tears again. I don't know what to say. Say you'll meet with Richard tomorrow. Say you'll let me help. She nodded slowly. Okay. Good. I'm also going to increase security around the property. You won't notice it, my people are very discreet, but if Marcus comes anywhere near here, we'll know. He's been watching the house, Elena whispered. I've seen his car parked down the street when I leave for the day. He doesn't approach, just watches. Like he's reminding me he knows where I work. Ice formed in Dante's veins. How long has this been going on? Since I started here. 2 months. And you didn't report it? To who? Her voice broke. The police who've already ignored 6 complaints? The judge who said I didn't have enough evidence? Mr. Moretti, the system doesn't work for people like me. It works for people like Marcus, who know how to stay just inside the law while making my life hell. Dante picked up his phone and pulled up a contact. Vincent, I need eyes on a black BMW, license plate. He looked at Elena. She recited the plate number from memory. Of course she'd memorized it. It was probably the first thing she checked for every time she left a building. I want to know every time that car comes within 3 blocks of my property. Dante said into the phone. And I want to know where it goes when it leaves. After ending the call, he turned back to Elena. You're not alone anymore. Do you understand that? I want to believe you, she said quietly. But I've heard promises before. I don't make promises I can't keep, Elena. Marcus Reeves will not touch you again. That's not a promise. That's a fact. The next morning, Elena met Richard Chen at his office in downtown Boston. The law firm occupied 3 floors of a sleek glass tower overlooking the common, the kind of place where Elena would normally feel completely out of her element. But Richard Chen, despite his expensive suit and corner office, had a warm demeanor that put her at ease within minutes. Mr. Moretti explained your situation, Richard said, gesturing for her to sit in a comfortable chair across from his desk. I want you to know that everything you tell me is protected by attorney-client privilege. Nothing leaves this room without your permission. Elena nodded, her hands twisting in her lap. Walk me through the timeline. When did you first meet Marcus Reeves? For the next 2 hours, Elena recounted 18 months of systematic abuse. It started so gradually she hadn't recognized it. Marcus had been charming at first, attentive, telling her she was special. Then came the isolation, suggesting she didn't need her friends anymore since she had him. Then the criticism her clothes weren't right, her makeup was too much or not enough, she was too friendly with male coworkers. Then came the first time he grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. He'd apologized, cried, sworn it would never happen again. She'd believed him. It happened again 2 weeks later. The physical abuse escalated over time, Richard said, taking notes. What finally made you leave? He put his hands around my throat. Elena whispered, her fingers unconsciously touching her neck. We were arguing about my sister. He wanted me to tell Sophia she had to drop out of school, that supporting her was taking money away from us. When I refused, he just snapped, grabbed my throat and squeezed until I couldn't breathe. I passed out. When I woke up, he was crying, saying he loved me too much, that I made him lose control. That's when you knew you had to leave. That's when I knew one of us would end up dead if I stayed. And it was going to be me. Richard set down his pen. Elena, I'm going to be very direct with you. What Marcus is doing, the stalking, the continued harassment after you've obtained a restraining order, the physical assault, these are felonies. You have grounds for criminal charges that could put him in prison. I tried that, the police said. The police made a mistake. Richard interrupted gently. Or more accurately, someone made sure they made a mistake. Mr. Moretti's investigation has uncovered that Marcus has connections to a criminal organization that has been intervening on his behalf. Elena's eyes widened. What kind of connections? The kind that make assault charges disappear. But here's what they can't make disappear. Federal charges. If we can prove Marcus is crossing state lines to harass you, or if we can connect his harassment to his work for this criminal organization, jurisdiction shifts to the FBI. The FBI? Elena's voice rose with panic. I can't. I don't want to be involved in something that big. Marcus will be too busy worrying about federal charges to worry about you, Richard said firmly. But that's option 2. Option 1 is simpler. We go back to the judge who denied your restraining order extension with new evidence, and we make it impossible for him to say no. What new evidence? Medical records documenting your injuries. Surveillance footage showing Marcus watching Mr. Moretti's property, which establishes stalking. Testimony from credible witnesses. And most importantly, financial records showing Marcus can't afford his current lifestyle on his stated income, which raises questions about where his money is coming from. Elena blinked. How did you get all that? Mr. Moretti is very thorough when he decides to help someone. Over the next week, Elena's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. Richard filed an emergency motion to extend her restraining order, backed by a 15-page brief documenting Marcus's continued harassment. The judge, faced with indisputable evidence and the representation of one of Boston's most powerful law firms, had no choice but to grant the extension for a full year. Marcus responded exactly as expected. He started calling Elena's cell phone from different numbers, leaving increasingly unhinged voicemails. Vincent's surveillance team documented every call, every text, every violation of the new protective order. Meanwhile, Dante's investigation into Marcus's connection to the Hennigan crew uncovered something useful. Marcus had been working as an enforcer for their loan sharking operation, collecting debts through intimidation and violence. We have 3 victims willing to testify that Marcus assaulted them over unpaid debts, Vincent reported during a meeting in Dante's study. 2 of them required hospitalization. All 3 were too scared to report it initially. Until they learned they weren't alone, Dante said, understanding the implication. Until they learned someone with resources was willing to protect them, Vincent corrected. Your lawyer reached out through intermediaries, offered them legal representation and security. They jumped at the chance to finally tell their stories. Dante leaned back in his chair, satisfied. This was how you destroyed someone without laying a finger on them. You turned their victims into witnesses. You exposed their crimes to the light. What about the detective who buried Marcus's previous assault charges? Detective Frank Morrison, 3rd Precinct. He's been on the Hennigan payroll for about 5 years. Small payments, easy to miss, but consistent. Send everything to the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. Anonymously. Vincent raised an eyebrow. You're burning down the whole operation just to get to Marcus? I'm burning down the infrastructure that allowed Marcus to hurt people with impunity, Dante corrected. If the Hennigans and their pet detective go down in the process, that's just efficiency. At the mansion, Elena was slowly beginning to believe she might actually be safe. She still jumped at unexpected sounds, still checked over her shoulder constantly, still had nightmares about Marcus finding her. But for the first time in months, she wasn't living in constant, paralyzing fear. Part of that was the security. Vincent's team had installed additional cameras around the property. There were always 2 guards on duty now, though they were discreet enough that most people wouldn't notice them. Elena knew they were there. Knowing made her breathe easier. But the bigger part was Dante himself. He'd given her his private cell number with instructions to call or text any time, day or night, if she felt unsafe. He checked in with her daily, usually in the morning when she brought his coffee, asking how she was doing without making her feel interrogated. And he'd done something else, something Elena hadn't expected. He'd treated her like a person, rather than a problem to be solved. How's your sister doing? Dante asked one morning as Elena set down his espresso. The question surprised her. Sophia? She's good, doing well in her classes. What's she studying? Engineering. She wants to design sustainable infrastructure. Elena smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. She's so smart, Mr. Moretti. Smarter than I ever was. I doubt that. Dante looked up from his papers. You're supporting her through school while working full-time and dealing with a dangerous stalker. That takes intelligence and strength most people don't have. Elena blushed, unused to compliments. I'm just doing what needs to be done. That's what strength is, Dante said simply. Doing what needs to be done even when it's hard. These small moments of connection began to accumulate. Elena found herself less nervous around Dante, more willing to speak when he asked questions, more comfortable existing in his presence. 2 weeks after the restraining order was extended, Marcus made his first serious mistake. He showed up at Sophia's dorm at Boston University. Sophia was walking back from her evening class when a man approached her in the parking lot. He was charming at first, asking if she was Elena's sister, saying he was an old friend trying to get in touch. Sophia, who'd been warned extensively about Marcus, immediately recognized the threat. She ran back toward the campus police station, and Marcus, realizing his mistake, fled. But Vincent's surveillance team had been watching Sophia as part of their protection detail. They had photographs of Marcus approaching her, recordings of their brief exchange, and most importantly, evidence that he'd traveled to a university campus specifically to intimidate a witness's family member. That elevated his crime from harassment to witness intimidation and stalking across jurisdictional lines. Richard Chen filed a motion with the district attorney's office within hours, arguing for immediate arrest warrants. The DA, already under pressure from the FBI's investigation into Detective Morrison and the Hennigan crew, was eager to demonstrate that his office took domestic violence seriously. Marcus Reeves was arrested at Elite Fitness the following morning. The charges: violation of a restraining order, stalking, witness intimidation, and conspiracy to commit assault in connection with his work for the Hennigan organization. The bail was set at $50,000. Marcus's lawyer argued he wasn't a flight risk, that he had steady employment and community ties. But Richard Chen countered with a detailed presentation of Marcus's pattern of violence, his connections to organized crime, and his escalating behavior toward Elena and her sister. Bail was denied. Marcus Reeves would remain in custody until trial. When Elena received the news, she was in the mansion's kitchen, helping Mrs. Chen prepare dinner. Richard called her personally to explain what had happened. She listened in silence, then very carefully set down the phone and started crying. Not panicked tears or frightened tears. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. Mrs. Chen wrapped her arms around Elena, letting her sob into her shoulder while murmuring soothing words in Mandarin that Elena didn't understand but found comforting anyway. Dante found them like that when he came looking for Elena. Mrs. Chen caught his eye and smiled, nodding, toward Elena's shaking shoulders. "Good tears," Mrs. Chen said simply. Dante waited until Elena had composed herself before approaching. She looked up at him with red, puffy eyes and a trembling smile. "He's in jail," she said, voice thick with emotion. "Richard said he can't make bail. He's actually in jail. Yes, he is. Because of you. Because you helped me when no one else would." "Because you were brave enough to accept help," Dante corrected. "Because you testified. Because you didn't give up." Elena stood up, and before Dante could react, she crossed the kitchen and hugged him. It was quick, spontaneous, and completely inappropriate for an employer-employee relationship. She pulled back almost immediately, embarrassment flooding her face. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "It's fine," Dante said, and surprised himself by meaning it. "You're welcome, Elena." The weeks that followed Marcus's arrest brought a strange new normalcy to Elena's life. She stopped checking over her shoulder every few minutes. She slept through the night without nightmares. She smiled more easily and moved through the mansion without that constant tension coiling in her shoulders. But something else was changing too, something she wasn't quite ready to acknowledge. Her awareness of Dante Moretti was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. It wasn't just gratitude, though she felt that in abundance. It was the way he listened when she spoke, really listened, like her words mattered. The way he'd arranged for Sophia's dorm to have enhanced security without being asked. The way he checked in with her every morning, his dark eyes assessing her well-being with genuine concern. The way her pulse quickened when she entered a room and found him there. Elena knew it was dangerous to develop feelings for Dante Moretti. He was her employer, first and foremost. He was also clearly someone who operated in worlds she couldn't fully comprehend, with connections and power that both protected and isolated him. And yet, one evening in late October, Elena was working later than usual, helping Mrs. Chen prepare for a dinner party Dante was hosting the following night. The other staff had left for the day, and the mansion felt cavernous and quiet. Elena was in the formal dining room, polishing silver candlesticks, when Dante appeared in the doorway. "You should have left an hour ago," he observed, Elena looked up, startled. I wanted to help Mrs. Chen finish preparations. She's been working so hard. So have you. Dante moved into the room, hands in his pockets. When's the last time you took a day off? Elena had to think about it. I don't know. I like working. It keeps my mind occupied. You're allowed to rest, Elena. The world won't end if you take a day for yourself. I know. She set down the candlestick. When I'm busy, I don't think about Marcus as much. I don't wonder if he'll make bail somehow. Or if his friends will come after me. Or if… Elena. Dante's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Marcus is facing 5 years minimum. His criminal connections are being investigated by the FBI. His lawyer is advising him to take a plea deal. He's not getting out. And even if he did, he'd be on such strict probation that breathing wrong would send him back to prison. I know all that logically. But fear isn't logical. No, Dante agreed. It's not. They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the ticking of an antique clock in the hallway. Thank you, Elena said quietly. Not just for what you did with Marcus, but for understanding. For not treating me like I'm broken because I'm still scared sometimes. You're not broken, Elena. You're recovering. There's a difference. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something shifted in the air between them. A charge, an awareness. Something neither of them had acknowledged, but both had felt building for weeks. Dante cleared his throat, breaking the moment. Go home. Elena, get some rest. Mrs. Chen can finish this tomorrow. Yes, Mr. Moretti. She gathered her things and headed for the staff exit, but paused at the doorway. When she looked back, Dante was still standing in the dining room, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. The dinner party the following evening was a success, though Elena kept herself busy in the kitchen and out of sight. She'd learned early in her employment that Dante kept his professional life completely separate from his household staff, and his guests that night were clearly business associates. She was carrying a tray of clean dishes to the kitchen when she overheard a conversation from the hallway. I heard you made an enemy of the Hennigan crew. A man's voice, amused but cautious. That was a bold move, Dante, even for you. They made themselves my enemy when they protected someone who was hurting my staff. Dante's voice was calm, but edged with steel. I don't tolerate that kind of disrespect. Your staff? I heard it was a girl, a maid. Another voice, this one with a smirk in it. Since when does Dante Moretti go to war over a maid? Since one of my employees was assaulted, and the local police did nothing about it. Dante's tone had gone cold. Would you prefer I ignored it and let it continue? I'm just saying, people are talking, wondering if there's something more personal going on. People can wonder whatever they like. My reasons are my own. Elena hurried past, not wanting to hear more, her heart pounding. She hadn't considered how Dante's decision to help her might be perceived by others in his world. The idea that she might be causing problems for him made her stomach twist. Later that night, after the guests had left and the kitchen was cleaned, Elena knocked on Dante's study door. Come in. She entered to find him at his desk, tie loosened, looking tired but alert. Elena, something wrong? I overheard something tonight. One of your guests, they said. They said people are talking. About you helping me. That it might be causing problems. Dante's expression didn't change. And I don't want to be a problem for you, Mr. Moretti. If helping me has created difficulties in your business, I can… Stop right there. Dante stood, moving around his desk. First, people always talk. That's what they do. Second, anyone who has a problem with how I choose to protect my people isn't someone whose opinion I value. And third, he paused, studying her face. Why did you come to tell me this? Because I feel responsible. You've done so much for me, and if that's caused trouble. The only trouble is Marcus Reeves, and he's handled. Everything else is just noise. Dante's voice softened slightly. Elena, you need to understand something. In my world, loyalty is everything. I take care of people who work for me. That's not negotiable, and it's not dependent on what others think about it. Elena nodded slowly. I don't want you to regret helping me. I don't, and I won't. He moved back to his desk, effectively dismissing the conversation. Go home, Elena. It's late. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. As she left, Elena felt the weight of unspoken things hanging between them. Gratitude, yes. Respect, certainly. But underneath it all, something else was growing. Something dangerous and complicated and utterly inappropriate given their circumstances. She pushed those thoughts away as she left the mansion, not noticing the black sedan parked down the street until it was too late. The car's headlights flicked on, and a figure emerged from the driver's side. Elena's blood turned to ice. It wasn't Marcus. This man was bigger, broader, with a shaved head and tattoos crawling up his neck. Elena Vasquez? His voice was rough, casual, like they were old friends meeting for coffee. Elena backed up toward the mansion gate, fumbling for her phone. Marcus sends his regards. Says you've been causing him a lot of trouble. He's in jail, Elena said, hating how her voice shook. Yeah, and he's got friends on the outside. The man started walking toward her slowly, deliberately. Friends who don't appreciate snitches. Elena's finger found the emergency contact button on her phone, Dante's direct line. She pressed it without looking, praying he'd answer. Stay away from me, she warned, though she had no way to back up the threat. The man laughed. Or what? You'll call your boyfriend? The one who thinks he runs this city? He was close now. Close enough that she could smell cigarettes and cheap cologne. Marcus wanted me to give you a message. He reached for her, and Elena's body reacted on pure instinct. She'd taken self-defense classes after leaving Marcus, and the muscle memory kicked in. She stepped back, creating distance, and screamed. The mansion's lights blazed on. The gate flew open, and Dante appeared with Vincent and 2 security guards, all of them moving with the coordinated precision of people trained for exactly this scenario. The man froze, realizing his mistake too late. You have exactly 3 seconds to get off my property, Dante said, his voice deadly quiet. He wasn't even breathing hard, wasn't showing any emotion at all. After that, what happens to you is your own fault. The man raised his hands, backing toward his car. Hey man, just delivering a message. 1. Look, I don't want any trouble. 2. The man ran, got in his car and peeled out, tires squealing. Vincent was already on his phone, reading off the license plate number to someone on the other end. Dante turned to Elena, who was shaking violently, adrenaline coursing through her. Are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak. Did he touch you? Another head shake. Dante closed the distance between them, his hands hovering near her shoulders without actually touching. Elena, look at me. She did, and the controlled fury in his eyes nearly undid her. You're safe. Do you understand? You're safe, he said. Marcus sent him. That Marcus has friends. Marcus made another mistake, Dante said flatly. His last one. Elena started crying then, the fear and adrenaline overwhelming her carefully maintained composure. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Stop apologizing. Dante finally touched her, his hands on her shoulders, warm and steady. This isn't your fault. None of this has ever been your fault. Vincent approached, phone still in hand, tracked the plates. Car belongs to Derek Walsh, enforcer for the Hennigan crew. He's got priors for assault and intimidation. Find him, Dante ordered. And when you do, make sure he understands that touching anyone associated with me has consequences. What kind of consequences? Dante's smile was cold. The legal kind. Call Richard Chen. I want Walsh arrested for assault, terroristic threats, and violation of the witness protection measures we put in place. And while we're at it, let the FBI know that the Hennigan crew is actively intimidating witnesses in their ongoing investigation. After Vincent left to make calls, Dante guided Elena inside the mansion. Mrs. Chen appeared, immediately wrapping Elena in a motherly embrace. I'll make tea, she announced, already moving toward the kitchen. Dante led Elena to his private sitting room, a space she'd never entered before. It was smaller than his study, more personal, with comfortable furniture and bookshelves full of worn paperbacks that suggested they were actually read, not just for show. Sit, he instructed, and Elena collapsed onto the sofa, still shaking. Dante poured her a whiskey from a crystal decanter. Drink this. It'll help. Elena took the glass with trembling hands, sipping the amber liquid. It burned going down, but it did steady her nerves slightly. I should have had someone walk you to your car, Dante said, anger clear in his voice. That was my mistake. It's not your responsibility to... Yes, it is. He sat down across from her, elbows on his knees. Elena, I need you to understand something. When I told you that you were under my protection, I meant it. That protection extends beyond the walls of this house. It extends to wherever you go, whoever threatens you, whatever happens. Do you understand? Why? The question came out small and broken. Why would you do all this for someone like me? Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Because the first time I saw you, you reminded me of someone I failed a long time ago. Because you work for me, which makes you my responsibility. And because, he stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. Because you deserve to feel safe, Elena. Everyone deserves that. You're not an exception. Mrs. Chen arrived with tea, setting it down with a significant look at Dante before quietly leaving. You should stay here tonight, Dante said. We have guest rooms. You'll be safe, and in the morning we can reassess security measures. I can't impose. You're not imposing. You're accepting the protection I'm offering. His voice left no room for argument. Elena nodded, too exhausted and shaken to fight. Dante showed her to a guest room on the second floor, beautifully appointed with a private bathroom and windows overlooking the garden. It was nicer than any hotel she'd ever stayed in. Lock the door, he instructed. Not that anyone would get past Vincent's team, but it'll help you feel safer. And Elena? He paused in the doorway. You did everything right tonight. You kept your distance, you called for help. You didn't freeze. I'm proud of you. After he left, Elena sat on the edge of the bed, processing everything that had happened. The threat, the rescue, the look in Dante's eyes when he'd realized she was in danger. This was getting complicated in ways she hadn't anticipated. Dante Moretti wasn't just her employer anymore, wasn't just the person who'd saved her from Marcus. He was becoming something else, something she couldn't quite define but felt in every interaction. And that scared her almost as much as Marcus ever had, because unlike Marcus, who'd destroyed everything he touched, Dante Moretti was the kind of man who could break her heart without even trying. The morning after the incident, Elena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting sensation of not knowing where she was. Then memory crashed back. Derek Walsh, the threat, Dante's cold fury, the guest room. She checked her phone. 7:43. She was late for work. Elena showered quickly, grateful that someone had left fresh towels and basic toiletries in the bathroom. She dressed in yesterday's clothes, feeling rumpled and off balance, and made her way downstairs. The mansion was already awake. She could hear Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, the quiet murmur of security personnel, the normal rhythms of a household starting its day. Dante was in his study, already dressed for business in a charcoal suit, reviewing something on his laptop. He looked up when she knocked. Elena, how did you sleep? Better than I expected, actually. She hovered in the doorway. Thank you for letting me stay. I should get to work. Sit down first. She obeyed, noting the way he closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. Derek Walsh was arrested at 4 this morning, Dante said without preamble. He's being charged with witness intimidation, assault, and conspiracy. The FBI was very interested to learn that the Hennigan crew was actively threatening witnesses in their ongoing investigation. Elena's hands twisted in her lap. So it's over? With Walsh? Yes. With the Hennigans? Dante's expression was grim. They're finished. The FBI has enough evidence to bring down their entire operation. Most of that evidence came from Marcus's cooperation, ironically enough. Marcus is cooperating. His lawyer convinced him it was his only option. He's testifying against the Hennigans in exchange for a reduced sentence. Still looking at 3 to 5 years. But it's better than the decade he was facing. Elena absorbed this information, trying to process what it meant. So I'm safe? Really safe? Yes. The Hennigans won't risk further FBI scrutiny by going after you. Walsh is facing serious time and has no incentive to protect Marcus anymore. And Marcus himself is cooperating with federal prosecutors, which means he's under their protection now. If anything happens to you, it endangers their case. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Dante stood, moving to look out the window. But Elena, I want you to understand something. What happened last night can't happen again. I underestimated how far Marcus's connections would go to intimidate you. That was my failure. It wasn't. It was. He turned to face her. Which is why I'm implementing new security measures. Vincent will have someone escort you to and from work. Your apartment will be monitored 24 hours. And I want you to consider relocating to somewhere Marcus and his associates don't know about. Elena's stomach sank. You want me to leave? I want you to be safe. Your current apartment is compromised. They know where you live. I can't afford to move. The rent I'm paying now is already stretching my budget. And with Sophia's tuition, I own several properties around Boston," Dante interrupted. "There's a secured building in Back Bay with a vacant 2-bedroom unit. It has a doorman, cameras, controlled access. You could move there, and the rent would be manageable." Elena stared at him. "Mr. Moretti, I can't accept. The rent would be what you're paying now," he continued as if she hadn't spoken. "Same amount, just a safer location. And before you argue, this isn't charity. I need my employees to feel secure. When they're constantly worried about their safety, it affects their work performance." It was a lie, and they both knew it. But it was a lie that allowed Elena to accept without feeling like she was taking advantage of his generosity. "When could I move?" she asked quietly. "This weekend, if you'd like. I'll have Vincent arrange movers." Elena nodded, overwhelmed by how quickly her life was changing. 2 months ago, she'd been barely surviving, looking over her shoulder, living in constant fear. Now she had legal representation, protection, and apparently a new apartment in one of Boston's nicest neighborhoods. All because Dante Moretti had noticed bruises on her wrist and decided she mattered. "Thank you," she said, the words feeling inadequate. "For everything. I don't know how I'll ever repay." "You don't repay it," Dante said firmly. "You move forward. You build the life you deserve. You help your sister finish school. That's enough." The moving process happened with the same efficient precision that seemed to characterize everything Dante Moretti did. By Saturday morning, a team of professional movers had packed Elena's modest belongings from her old apartment. By afternoon, they were unpacking in her new place a beautiful 2-bedroom unit on the 4th floor of a historic building that had been renovated with modern security features. The apartment was furnished, which Elena hadn't expected. When she questioned it, Vincent explained that it came as is, another lie that made accepting easier. Sophia arrived to help unpack, her eyes wide as she took in the space. "Elena, this place is amazing," her sister breathed, running her hand along the granite kitchen counters. "How can you afford this?" "My employer owns the building. He's giving me a good rate." Not quite a lie, but not quite the truth either. Sophia studied her sister's face. "Your employer, the one who helped with Marcus?" "Yes. Is he? Is something going on between you two?" "No." Elena said it too quickly, too defensively. "He's just being kind. He's a good man who doesn't like seeing people hurt." Sophia didn't look convinced, but she dropped the subject, instead focusing on setting up Elena's bedroom. Later that evening, after Sophia had left and Elena was alone in her new apartment, she stood at the window overlooking the tree-lined street below. For the first time in 18 months, she felt like she could breathe fully. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dante. "Settled in?" Elena smiled despite herself. "Yes. Thank you again. Security team is monitoring the building. You have their number programmed into your phone. Use it if you need anything." "I will." A pause then. "Sleep well, Elena." She stared at the message, at the simple kindness of those 3 words, and felt something warm unfold in her chest. Something dangerous and complicated and entirely inappropriate for someone in her position. She was falling for Dante Moretti. The realization should have terrified her. After Marcus, after learning the hard way that trusting the wrong person could destroy you, she should have been more careful with her heart. But Dante wasn't Marcus. Dante had never demanded anything from her, never made her feel small, never used his power to control her. He'd simply protected her, asking nothing in return. That made him more dangerous than any abuser, because he made her want to trust again, to hope again, to believe that maybe not all powerful men were predators. "Good night, Mr. Moretti." She texted back, maintaining the professional distance that was becoming harder to preserve. The weeks following Elena's move brought a deceptive peace. Marcus remained in custody, cooperating with prosecutors. The Hennigan crew was dismantled piece by piece as the FBI arrested key members. Derek Walsh took a plea deal that ensured he'd spend the next 7 years in prison. Elena's restraining order against Marcus was extended for 5 years and would remain in effect even after his release from prison. Richard Chen had built such an ironclad case that no judge would dare dismiss it. At the mansion, Elena's work continued as before, but the dynamic had shifted. She was no longer just another member of the household staff. The other employees treated her with a respect that bordered on deference, though she couldn't understand why. "Mrs. Chen explained it one afternoon while they were preparing lunch. They see how Mr. Moretti treats you, the older woman said, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. He doesn't do that for just anyone. He was just helping someone in need. Elena. Mrs. Chen set down her knife, fixing her with a knowing look. I've worked for the Moretti family for 23 years. I watched Dante grow from an angry teenager into the man he is now. I've seen him help many people, but I've never seen him involve himself so personally in someone's life. Elena's cheeks flushed. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. That man cares about you. How you feel about that is your business. I'm just saying, be careful with both your hearts. The warning lingered with Elena as she went about her day. Was Mrs. Chen right? Did Dante care about her as more than just an employee he'd helped? And more importantly, what was Elena supposed to do with her own growing feelings? The answer came sooner than she expected. It was a Wednesday evening in early November. Elena was finishing her shift, gathering her things from the staff room, when Dante appeared in the doorway. Elena, do you have a moment? Of course, Mr. Moretti. He gestured for her to follow him to his study. Once inside, he closed the door and turned to face her, hands in his pockets, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting. Elena's heart started racing. Okay. Dante took a breath. When I first met you, when I saw those bruises and realized what was happening, I made a decision to help you. That decision was based on principle, on duty, on a promise I made to myself 15 years ago that I'd never fail to protect someone the way I failed my sister. Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. But somewhere along the way, my motivations changed. Helping you stopped being about principle and started being about you, specifically. About wanting to see you smile. About needing to know you were safe. About caring what happened to you in a way that goes far beyond professional responsibility. He moved closer, his dark eyes intense. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that if you're uncomfortable, if you want to maintain strictly professional boundaries, I will respect that completely. You'll keep your job, your apartment, all the security measures we've put in place. Nothing will change except that I'll stop hoping for something more. Elena's breath caught. What are you hoping for? The chance to take you to dinner. Not as your employer. As someone who would very much like to get to know you better. Someone who thinks about you far more than is probably appropriate. He paused. But I need you to understand something else. I'm not a safe choice, Elena. My life is complicated in ways I can't fully explain. There are parts of my business I can never share with you. There will always be an element of danger around me. You're saying you're not Marcus, Elena said softly. But you're also not a white knight. I'm saying I'm someone who operates in shades of gray. I do things others might consider morally questionable. I make decisions that keep me awake some nights. But I've never hurt someone who didn't hurt me first, and I would never, ever hurt you. Elena studied his face, seeing the vulnerability there, the genuine concern that she might reject him. Can I ask you something? Anything. When you helped me with Marcus, when you went after the Hennigans, destroyed their operation, had Derek Walsh arrested, was any of that about wanting to date me? Was any of it manipulation to make me feel grateful enough to say yes? No. The answer was immediate and unequivocal. I helped you because you needed help, because it was the right thing to do. I'm telling you how I feel now because the crisis is over and you're safe, because you have the freedom to say no without worrying about losing the protection I've provided. And if I say no, then we continue exactly as we have been. You work here, I respect your boundaries, and we both move on with our lives. Elena took a deep breath, weighing everything. Marcus had isolated her, controlled her, made her feel like she owed him everything. Dante had freed her, protected her, and was now offering her a choice with no strings attached. The difference was everything. I'd like to have dinner with you, she said quietly. Not as your employee, as someone who's also been thinking about you more than is probably appropriate. Dante's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way she'd never seen before. Saturday. I'll pick you up at 7. As Elena left the mansion that evening, her heart was lighter than it had been in years. She was taking a risk, yes, opening herself up to potential hurt, but for the first time since leaving Marcus, she felt like she was truly living rather than just surviving. Saturday evening arrived with Elena in a state of nervous anticipation she hadn't felt since high school. She'd gone shopping with Sophia, who'd been thrilled about the date despite her protective instincts about her older sister's heart. They'd chosen a simple but elegant navy dress that made Elena feel confident without being overdressed. At exactly 7 o'clock, Dante arrived at her building. The doorman called up to announce him, and Elena took one last look in the mirror before heading downstairs. Dante waited in the lobby wearing dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that somehow made him look both dangerous and sophisticated. When he saw her, his expression softened into genuine appreciation. "You look beautiful. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." She smiled, nervous but excited. He'd arranged for a car to take them to a small Italian restaurant in the North End, family-owned and intimate, with checkered tablecloths and candles flickering in wine bottles. "I know the owner," Dante explained as they were seated at a corner table. "He'll make sure we're not disturbed." Over pasta and wine, they talked. Really talked. Not as employer and employee, not as protector and protected, but as two people getting to know each other. Elena learned that Dante had studied business at Boston College, that he'd lost his sister to domestic violence when he was 22, that he read voraciously and had a weakness for old movies. He was surprisingly funny when he wasn't in business mode, with a dry wit that caught her off guard and made her laugh. Dante learned that Elena had wanted to be a teacher before her parents died, that she played piano though she hadn't touched one in years, that she was fiercely protective of Sophia and would do anything to see her sister succeed. "Tell me about your parents," Dante said gently. Elena's smile faded slightly. "Car accident 3 years ago. Drunk driver ran a red light. They died instantly, which the doctors said was a mercy. I was 21, Sophia was 16. Suddenly I was responsible for everything: funeral arrangements, selling their house, making sure Sophia could stay in school. That's when you met Marcus?" 6 months later. I was working 2 jobs, exhausted all the time, barely keeping everything together. He seemed stable, supportive, someone who could help carry the weight. She laughed bitterly. "I was so desperate for help that I missed all the red flags." Dante reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "You weren't desperate. You were surviving impossible circumstances. Marcus took advantage of that. That's on him, not you. I know that now. Took a while to believe it, but I know it." They lingered over dessert, neither wanting the evening to end. When Dante finally drove her home, he walked her to her apartment door like a gentleman from another era. "I had a wonderful time," Elena said, suddenly shy. "So did I." Dante hesitated, then asked, "May I see you again? I'd like that." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, he kissed her softly, briefly, a promise of possibility rather than a demand. "Good night, Elena. Good night, Dante." Inside her apartment, Elena leaned against the door, smiling like a teenager. For the first time in years, she felt hopeful about the future. The next few weeks unfolded like a dream Elena was afraid to wake from. She and Dante continued dating, keeping it private from the other household staff initially. They'd have dinner at quiet restaurants, take walks along the Charles River, spend evenings at his penthouse talking until midnight. Dante was attentive without being controlling, affectionate without being possessive. He asked about her day, remembered small details she mentioned in passing, supported her dreams without trying to take over her life. It was so different from Marcus that sometimes Elena had to remind herself this was real, that men could actually be kind without expecting something in return. But there were moments when she caught glimpses of Dante's other life. The way he'd excuse himself to take calls he couldn't have her overhear. The respect, or was it fear, people showed him when they were out in public. The way Vincent and his security team treated him not just as a boss, but as someone whose orders were absolute. One evening in December, Elena was at Dante's penthouse when he received a call that clearly troubled him. She watched his expression harden, his voice drop to that cold, controlled tone she'd heard only a few times before. "Handle it," he said into the phone. "I don't care what it takes. Make it clear that kind of disrespect won't be tolerated." After he hung up, he sat silent for a moment, tension radiating from his shoulders. "Dante?" Elena ventured carefully. He looked at her, and something in his expression made her heart ache. "I'm sorry. Business problem. Do you want to talk about it?" "I can't. Not because I don't trust you, but because knowing certain things would put you at risk." Elena moved to sit beside him on the couch. "I know you're not exactly a legitimate businessman, Dante. I'm not naive. I know you're not." He took her hand, threading their fingers together. "But there's knowing in theory and knowing in practice. Some things are better left unspoken. As long as you're not hurting innocent people. I'm not, he interrupted. I have rules, Elena, lines I don't cross. But I operate in a world where violence is sometimes necessary, where power is currency, where trust is rare, and betrayal is common. That's the reality of who I am. And you're worried that reality will scare me away. Shouldn't it? Elena thought about that, about Marcus, who'd been a civilian with no criminal connections, and had still terrorized her for months. About Dante, who operated outside the law, but had never made her feel anything but safe. Marcus taught me that danger doesn't always look dangerous, she said slowly. Sometimes it looks normal, respectable, safe. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones society trusts. She met his eyes. You've never lied to me about who you are, Dante. You've never pretended to be something you're not. That's more honesty than most people offer. That doesn't bother you? It bothers me less than it probably should, she admitted. But I've learned to judge people by their actions, not their circumstances, and your actions toward me have been nothing but protective and kind. Dante pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, but you're stuck with me anyway. As Christmas approached, Elena's life had transformed so completely she sometimes had to pinch herself to believe it was real. Marcus was serving his sentence, his parole hearing years away. The Hennigans were dismantled, their members either in prison or scattered to avoid federal prosecution. Derek Walsh had taken his plea deal and would remain behind bars for the foreseeable future. Elena's restraining order was solid, her apartment was secure, and Sophia was thriving at BU, unaware of how close she'd come to being a victim of Marcus's revenge. And then there was Dante. Their relationship had deepened into something neither of them had expected. What started as protector and protected had evolved into genuine partnership. They challenged each other, supported each other, made each other laugh. Elena had met Lucia, Dante's sister, who'd given her approval with a hug and a whispered, "Thank you for making him happy again." On Christmas Eve, Dante invited Elena to his family's holiday dinner. It was a small gathering, just Lucia, her husband Marco, their 2 young children, and Vincent, who Dante considered family. Elena felt nervous walking into the elegant dining room, aware that she was being evaluated as Dante's girlfriend by people who clearly loved and protected him fiercely. But Lucia put her at ease immediately, engaging her in conversation about Sophia's studies and complimenting Elena's dress. The children, a boy of 5 and a girl of 3, were delightful chaos that made everyone laugh. After dinner, Dante walked Elena out to the terrace overlooking the city. Snow had started falling, dusting Boston in white. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said, wrapping his coat around her shoulders against the cold. "Thank you for inviting me. Your family is wonderful. They like you. Lucia told me you're good for me, that I seem lighter than I have in years." Elena smiled. "You're good for me too. I never thought I'd feel safe enough to trust someone again, but you've made me believe it's possible." Dante pulled a small wrapped box from his pocket. "I have something. For you." "Dante, we said no gifts. Open it." Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a small charm shaped like a key. "It's beautiful," Elena breathed. "The key is symbolic," Dante explained, fastening it around her wrist. "For new beginnings. New doors opening. A future that's yours to unlock." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I love it. I love..." She stopped, the words catching in her throat. Dante tilted her chin up, his dark eyes searching hers. "Say it. I love you," she whispered. "I know it's probably too soon, and maybe I'm crazy, but I do. I love you, Dante." He kissed her then, deep and tender and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too, Elena. I've been afraid to say it, afraid I'd scare you away. But I've loved you since the moment you chose to trust me with the truth about Marcus. Since the moment you showed me what real courage looks like." They stood on the terrace as snow fell around them, holding each other, 2 people who'd found safety and healing in the most unexpected place. 5 months later, on a warm evening in May, Dante invited Elena to dinner at his penthouse. She arrived to find the terrace transformed with candles and flowers, the city spread out below them like a sea of lights. "What's all this?" she asked, smiling. "I have something to ask you." Her heart started racing. "Dante." He knelt down on one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. "Elena Vasquez, you walked into my life at a moment when I'd forgotten what it meant to truly care about someone. You reminded me that protecting people isn't just a duty, it's a privilege. That love doesn't have to be controlling to be real. That trust is possible, even after betrayal. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant diamond ring. I know we've only been together a few months. I know you might need more time. But I also know with absolute certainty that I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you feel safe, loved, and free to be exactly who you are. Will you marry me? Elena's eyes filled with tears. A year ago, she'd been hiding bruises and living in constant fear. 6 months ago, she'd been learning to trust again. Now, she was standing on a terrace overlooking Boston, being asked to marry a man who'd shown her what real love looked like. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you. Dante slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply as the city lights twinkled below them. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at Lucia's home, with Sophia as maid of honor and Vincent as best man. Elena wore a simple ivory dress and carried white roses. Dante wore a dark suit and couldn't stop smiling. As they exchanged vows, Elena thought about the journey that had brought them here. The fear, the healing, the slow rebuilding of trust. The way Dante had seen her at her most vulnerable and chosen to protect rather than exploit. I promise to love you, Elena said, her voice steady and sure. To trust you, to build a life with you where we both feel safe enough to be our true selves. I promise to protect you, Dante replied, to respect your strength, to give you freedom, and to love you exactly as you are, today and always. When they kissed as husband and wife, sealing promises neither would break, it felt like coming home. 2 years later, Elena stood in the newly opened Women's Resource Center that she and Lucia had established together. The center provided legal services, counseling, and safe housing for domestic violence survivors, everything Elena had needed, but struggled to find when she was running from Marcus. She'd left her position at the mansion to run the center full-time, using everything she'd learned from her own experience to help other women escape their abusers. Dante supported the center financially and through his connections, ensuring it had the resources to truly help people. He'd even hired several survivors onto his legitimate business payroll, giving them stable income while they rebuilt their lives. There's someone here to see you, the receptionist announced. A young woman stood in the lobby, probably early 20s, with haunted eyes and bruises poorly concealed with makeup. She clutched a piece of paper with the center's address, her hands trembling. Elena recognized that fear. She'd worn it herself once. Hi, Elena said gently, approaching slowly. I'm Elena. You're safe here. Whatever you need, whatever brought you here, you're safe. The woman started crying. I don't know where else to go. My boyfriend, You don't have to explain right now, Elena interrupted softly. Let's get you somewhere comfortable, get you some water, and we'll figure out the next steps together. Okay? The woman nodded, relief flooding her face at finally being believed. As Elena led her to a private office, she felt Dante's presence in the doorway. He'd stopped by to check on her, something he did most days. Their eyes met, and he smiled proud of her, proud of what she'd built, proud of how far she'd come. Elena smiled back, then turned her attention to the woman who needed her help. This was her purpose now, taking the strength she'd gained from her own survival and using it to help others find their way out of the darkness. It wouldn't erase what she'd been through. Nothing could do that. But it gave meaning to the pain, transformed trauma into purpose, turned a victim's story into a survivor's legacy. That evening, Elena returned to the home she shared with Dante, a brownstone in Beacon Hill they'd purchased together, a space that belonged to both of them equally. Dante was in the kitchen making dinner, something he'd taken up as a hobby after they got married. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening the way it always did when he saw her. How was your day? He asked, pulling her into his arms. Hard, good, necessary. She rested her head against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. We helped 3 women today. 3 women who walked through our doors because they'd heard we actually believe survivors. Because of you, Dante said, pressing a kiss to her hair. You built that trust. We built it together. She pulled back to look at him. None of this would exist without you, Dante. The resources, the security, the network of support, that's all you. I just funded it. You made it real. They stood in their kitchen, holding each other. 2 people who'd found healing through protecting others who needed it most. I love you, Elena said, the words still feeling miraculous even after 2 years. Thank you for seeing me that day. For noticing the bruises. For caring enough to help. I love you too, Dante replied, cupping her face in his hands. And Elena? I'll always see you, always protect you, always love you exactly as you are. That's not a promise that expires. That's forever. They kissed softly, a reminder of vows spoken and kept, of trust earned and honored, of a future built on the foundation of seeing each other, truly seeing each other and choosing love anyway. Outside their brownstone, Boston continued its eternal rhythm. People rushed past on their way home from work. Cars navigated traffic. The city lived and breathed and moved forward. And inside one small home, 2 people who'd found each other in darkness continued building their life in the light, proving every day that survival could become more than just surviving. It could become thriving, healing, loving, and living fully, without fear. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.